Hey, welcome to the Legacymakers podcast. Legacymakers believes that family is the foundation of society, and if you can change your family, you can change the world. If this episode inspires you, would you consider making a tax-deductible donation at www.chooseourlegacy.com. Thanks, and enjoy the show. Alrighty, well, welcome back. Hey, this is Ben Glassman with Legacymakers, and we are on episode number 10. 10 episodes in. Hey, this is a milestone, okay? This is the real deal. Like, we're still trucking here. You know, I got some buddies who they say, "Oh, I want to start a podcast," and then 3 episodes in, they're like, maybe we shouldn't. But we're still going, okay? Legacymakers still cruising. I got a lot of plans. We got a lot of plans. We're going to be like 500 episodes in one day, and we're going to look back and be like, wow. Let's go. So anyway, hey, thank you guys so much for jumping in. We got Fisher Derderian back again. So just to let you in on a little secret here, guys, if you're listening, the way that we record podcasts is we actually record 2 episodes in one sitting. Mm-hmm. So Fisher was here for episode number 9, and well, guess what? He's back for number 10.
Well, it's a pleasure to be back, Ben. Glad to be here.
Hey, yeah, man. Thank you so much. If you remember Fisher, so he is the executive director from the Roger Scruton Legacy Foundation, which is in my mind, worldwide. UK, United States, but they are doing some incredible work and really reestablishing, I would say, just foundational, conservative, traditional values across the globe. And so we are so thankful to have Fisher here to share and give just some really deep, profound, intellectual, and just educated insight to why family is important, why the home is important, and why it makes such a difference if we're intentional in the world. And so thank you, Fisher. Thank you, everybody, for being here. Thank you, George. Thank you, Ben. Just such a gift to do this with you guys. So today, the way that we're going to kind of take this conversation, the title is the nuclear family old school? And is it time for something different? I don't know. I would say, no. It's time to keep it going. It's time to hit it in 6th gear and let's keep cruising. But others might say something else.
Can I sabotage this already, Ben?
Absolutely. Jump in, dude.
Just go right into the dialogue.
Yes, please.
Because you just said it, and I saw on the whiteboard too that part of like Fisher's emphasis is this so-called conservatism.
Yeah.
And I'd love to even understand how that word's being used or like what's meant by it.
Yeah,
because
that sounds great.
Language these days, you have no idea what that. If I came out and said I'm a conservative, like there's this line of mental thought, imagery that would come in, but I have no idea if that. His definition could be 4,000 years old according to a philosopher. So
yeah, that's true.
And this, I think it does segue, and it's relevant to this question.
Yeah. How would you respond, Fisher?
So conservatism, or the way I'll say Roger Scruton would respond is that it's a disposition. It's not an ideological thing or an ideology, right? And the sort of, I don't know, classical, traditional, however you want to phrase it, but the older understanding of conservative, or at least an understanding that's been fought for a while, is that it is not an ideology. It's not a political program, though, of course, there are political parties such as in the UK that go by the Conservative Party, or we reference the Republican Party here as conservatives. Mm-hmm. But it's this disposition, this understanding that traditions are important, that in some sense they carry this sort of implicit knowledge, a passed down knowledge, that through the many generations and centuries, things have, in some sense been discovered, shall we say, or let's take the example, a tradition of marriage, right? This is an institution. And these institutions have been formed in such a way because through lived experience, we've realized that it's good for a man and woman to be monogamous, to be faithful to one another, to raise children in this sort of environment, so on and so forth. And so in this sense, it's a deeper rooted sort of conservative approach to the world. And this means, a care for one another, of seeing the other person as an I rather than a thing, right? I as in the letter I, a subject instead of an object in sort of the philosophical language. Wow. This means caring for, that which is around us, such as the environment, understanding that culture is important and that we have to have a culture, that we have to care for it, that the things that we've received will generally, on the whole, be better than things that we are creating for the first time, right? And really, I'd say the conservative attitude, the conservative disposition, is one of gratitude. I think this is the most important thing to being a conservative, because at the end of the day, what we're grateful for is the generations that have come before us and the knowledge and life that we've been given through them, the developments, whether technologically, scientifically, societally, whatever it might be, right? There's a lot of work and effort that has been done. And though, yes, that we hear the sort of refrain we hear often, that there are many things wrong with our past and our history. Right. This is very much so true. But our task is to continue to reform, to make it better for future generations and leave it better than we found it. And that means accepting what future generations gave us in the first place and saying, how can we actually, add to it? We know slavery is wrong. How do we get rid of slavery? We know these things are wrong. How do we do this? And not being perhaps haughty or prideful in the fact that we are better than them, because we too, in 100, 200 years' time, will be seen for having our own foibles and grave moral errors and whatever it might be, right? So it's a bit of a rambling definition of conservatism, but hopefully one that's helpful and insightful in some sense.
Oh yeah, totally, on multiple levels. And again, I think it's relevant, Ben, because I just did a quick, just even word search, right? Yeah. That when you look up to conserve, which is the root of that, conservative, to protect, right? Or even to maintain or preserve. And then, all of that ties into your question, because a lot of your question,
totally.
And I want to turn to you next, and because your bomb you dropped right before we started recording is like the nuclear family is God's family, which I can't wait to hear more on that. But the inherent in your question is this idea of going back or looking back. Yeah. And I think Fisher just did a really eloquent job of articulating that lots of people would count themselves conservative using that definition. And it's so funny because we're in the same business in a way, because working for the church, I have constant brand confusion and constant miles and miles of unlearning what a person needs to hear. Right. Just Sunday, I preached from an article in the news about a post-evangelical conference that was held. Because we're so confused and messed up about those who have carried that brand and done so poorly. And same thing for you. If you're marching around talking about being a conservative, man, that you have to give a redeeming, working definition for people. And I think you just did a good job of that. To land the plane and circle it back to you, Ben, think about the people who would hear that, who are listening. Maybe they're not, the same political persuasion. I think whether they call themselves Republican or Democrat, conservative or liberal, they could totally get on board with what Fisher just said. Like 100%. The things that from the past, whether it be 100 years old, 1,000, 2,000, 4,000, some of them are worth maintaining. That's what the definition, what he just said, maintaining traditional values and continuing them if they're good and they work and they've been tested. And that's good. But how are you using the term nuclear family, brother? I got to hear that from you.
No. It might be anticlimactic. I don't know. No, but what I'm saying is the nuclear family is God's family, in the sense that it's literally, the family was designed as a husband and a wife, straight up, make kids, have a family, have a home, raise them up, send them out, and then repeat.
Okay.
So anticlimactic, most likely, and I don't know where you were going, but that's the nuclear family in my mind. But that's the way that it's been intended since the beginning of time, and that's really
right.
We're all about. Legacymakers' vision is to see family restored to the way that it was intended.
Good.
And to the way that God intended it.
Right.
Which, obviously family, marriage, we know what God intended. So that's my idea of the nuclear family. I mean, the word nuclear it's a more, recent description. And exactly. But I would just say, that's just the way that God intended.
That makes a lot more sense. And I just say, and I'm glad we established that in the first 10 minutes, because again, the listener could be confusing. Maybe I'm the only one that remembers this from my literal sociology 101 class, and someone else could correct me if they have a better beat on it than I do. But as I understand it from the textbook definition, it meant mom, dad, 2 kids, boy, girl, right? You have a picture of the mid-century modern home, and dad works, mom cooks. And so now you can see already after I just said that comment, it's it's starting to be fraught with all these gender norms and traditional household values, and it's like, oh, is that? And then we said that's perfect, and that's the bar that we're aiming for. But that's not at all what you just said. What you just said was, I tie my bar to God.
Yeah.
I tie my bar to Scripture.
Exactly.
And you can even because Scripture talks about one man, one woman.
Yep.
The first century church was famous for being monogamous. Mm-hmm. Wow, like that's why people wanted to join, because that was one of 5 marks that made them so insanely remarkable. If you joined that group in the first century, you were very likely to be killed. Wow. There's very, very, very low incentive to join that group. Wow. Very low. And there were 5 outstanding things that they had, and one of them was, and I think this just ties to our conversation, was that they were monogamous. They had a sexual ethic, which is totally unfounded in that period. So in that regard, I'm tracking with you, and I get it. Yeah, I think you're right.
Yeah. I would say the other version of nuclear family would probably open a can of worms. Anyway,
go
ahead, George.
Once the foundation of this nation, now the enemy. Right. Once the family,
to have your family like
one
that.
Nation under God, seeking after God's heart. Once the foundation of this great country, now the enemy, right? So it brings up to me like society's portrayal of the father, right? And how there's this term toxic masculinity now, right? And granted, right, I will say that certainly there's been an abuse of power throughout history by men, right, and leaders. But that you look at the portrayal of these men, and Al Bundy, for an example, he is the character that that they're going to make fun of, right? The pig that they're going to tear down, and he's the object of humor, right? Is society's portrayal. But what they're not telling us, which again, as we move away from truth and towards feeling, is that the statistics on a fatherless home, right? 2 times more likely to drop out of high school, 7 times more likely to get pregnant as a teen. 85% of our children with behavioral disorders come from a fatherless home. 90% of homeless and runaway kids come from fatherless. 63% of youth suicide. 85% of youth imprisonment come from fatherless homes.
85%. Is that what you said?
85%.
Yeah, it's astounding.
Well, I'll jump in here real quick. George, first, because I can tell you get a lot of ridicule for using Little Home on the Prairie. I want to.
I call it Little House.
Little House. Sorry, but I want to affirm you in this because I think this is good. I'll tie it back to Scruton in some sense too, because this is one of Scruton's fundamental arguments, somewhat related though not necessarily to the home or to family. But forgive me for going down this quick little rabbit trail. But Scruton argues that we come to understand the world, we come to understand ourselves and morality and all these different things through our experiences with these sorts of stories. These sorts of fairy tales or pieces of literature, great works of literature, right? We come to understand experiences which we do not have. And they, in some sense, teach us so that when we have these experiences, when we run into these situations, we're able to respond in an appropriate and good way, a virtuous way, right? A moral way. So I want to say, good on you for using it all the time.
Thanks for that, Fisher. And I just point back to this, to fatherlessness as society tries to remove the father from the home and remove God the Father from the schools. Maybe those who had fathers in the home wouldn't have ended up in prison, and had they been given God in the schools, they wouldn't have to find God in prison.
Yeah,
absolutely.
So I'll jump in on the larger topic, getting back to what we're actually discussing here.
Thank you.
Sorry, Ben. Sorry. But talking about the nuclear family, I'll give the sort of political thought approach, at least the sort the conservative strain of thinking that I'm in and from, which is that of Edmund Burke. So Edmund Burke was this British statesman and writer, thinker from the 18th century. A very interesting guy, a guy I wholly respect and admire for a whole host of reasons. But one of his major pieces of writings was a book called, or a pamphlet really, called Reflections on the Revolution in France. So this was looking at the revolution in France back, right after the American Revolution, talking about the sort of anti-traditional, a-traditional approach to society, trying to remake it in our own image, and eschewing everything that had come before it. And in this pamphlet, he talks about the little platoons, and this is sort of a rallying cry that you'll probably hear from conservatives today, all across the spectrum of conservatives. But this idea of the little platoons being the building blocks of society, and a little platoon being the family, right? The church, the community, local associations, all these sorts of things. These are fundamental to creating a society. Because without it, you would just have the state and the individual, right? These are the sort of mediating institutions in between, and so we ought to have the little platoons. This is just the phrase that's always bandied about. So in this sense, I completely agree that the nuclear family is of the greatest importance, right? Again, going back to our conversation in the previous episode, this is the place in which we first come to understand the world. This is the way in which, or the place in which, or the group in which we're formed to then go out into the world. Where was I going with this? I'm sorry, I just blanked for a moment.
It's all good.
But it's just important. but it's important to understand that the nuclear family is so crucial to society as a building block. But in some sense, I might even, then go on and disagree with myself in referring to the nuclear family, but perhaps referring to this more common understanding of the nuclear family, where it's that which is, pared down to the bare essentials, the mother, the father, and whatever children are there. And I think a lot of our sort of social ills in some sense come from, I don't want to say come from that very example or that very model, but they're perhaps added to by this model, because we've forgotten about, the extended family, the sort of communal aspect of family, one that goes beyond just the very immediate, okay, here's the man and woman who then have offspring kind of thing, and that's how we would define it, until that one of the offsprings goes off and creates their own offspring, and so on and so on. We ought to understand ourselves in larger families, because this ties us to places. This creates that sort of network and that social fabric that's so important to life and to living well, and to continuing to have those good influences and providing for each other in a way, so that when we have certain situations in which there's a single mother, whatever the cause might be, there are others that can step in and help out too.
So good.
Right? Because you need the example of the father, as you were saying, George. You need the male role model as much as you need the female role model. I mean, these are so important to a child's development, and to not have that or to lack that causes issues. And that's not to say that these are bad people because of it, but I mean, these are things that people struggle with for the rest of their lives.
And I'll give you a quick example of this high school that was having unbelievable amounts of violence, and then these five fathers stepped in and just made a presence on campus.
Yeah, I saw that.
Yeah, I should have pulled the name up, but basically all the violence went down, and these kids felt a sense of love and community. The fathers were just their presence being felt and being made known at that school completely changed it. And the kids are getting to class on time. There's a level of accountability. Even their presence within a school, completely outnumbered, has completely changed the trajectory of that school.
Yeah, I love the term little platoons even better than I like nuclear family, and I like the family of God better than maybe any of them. And I think it's a little bit of a spin-off of the main subject, but I do appreciate what Fisher's doing, helping us cover that blind spot almost of what about those who don't have a whole family, because that's how you're using the idea of nuclear as a whole. Mom, dad, and you too, George, mom, dad, whether they're siblings or not, there's a mom, dad in the home, and that's a better start than just one. That's true. But for those who didn't have that day one beginning, right? Again, I would just point briefly to that's the second mark of the 5. You guys are slowly chipping away the top 5 marks of the first century church. But the second mark was how the early church adopted and fostered abandoned children.
Oh wow!
So. What did they call that? It was called infant exposure, when a child who was most likely a girl was left on the street. And that was Greco-Roman common practice. Yeah. And it was the Christians. This is truly, you could tie back to like foster care day one, as we understand it in this country today. Yeah. The Christians would go out in the street listening for the wails of the babies, and they'd take them in.
Oh my goodness.
Are you just finished? Are you done right now?
I'm done.
I just love that heart. And now it's, not to make a Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles reference, but now it's Master Shredder going after those kids, dude.
Yeah, well, dude, it is. I mean, I mean, if you want to, so if that is a veiled reference to abortion, like I'll take the bait for 2 seconds and just say this: the church absolutely should continue to maintain, or Christian people, particularly in their private, lives when they have these conversations with people, because that's where it should be happening, not from the megaphone of like social media. In my opinion, that's a tangent. That one was for free, but this is the point. The Christian people should continue to, in a logical and well defended and biblical position, articulate why they're pro-life and sanctity of life and as holiness of life, all of that for sure. But also, they should put their money where their mouth is about the babies who are brought to term and are still left to be in the foster system. And those same numbers you just quoted, for if they're in the foster care system, they are 85, 95, 98% more likely to be incarcerated, to be on drugs, to be selling their bodies, and to be in prison or be on the street. So there is a causal line between those babies who are brought to fruition, who are brought to life, who are brought to term, and their lives turning out the way they are. So but I can just tie that, and you can, of course, respond, George, but full circle back to what Fisher's saying about, can we cover, in our definitions of family, Ben, can we cover those who didn't have that day one upbringing of a nuclear situation or a mom, dad, situation with the family of God kind of approach? And I pray to God that we can cover them with that type of consideration.
Well, my reference was not abortion, but I'm so glad that you went there. There are enough Christians statistically to eliminate orphans in, when I say eliminate, give them homes, provide them with homes in Orange County, right? I've looked up the numbers. Totally. But with Master Shredder, it was referencing like absentee parents or somebody who's kind of, being brought up outside of the home is a breeding ground for a George Soros to come in and pick them up to, create destruction.
Yeah. So any outside influences, basically, they just be raised on the street.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, I was just going to say too, I was going to mention that statistic because it's true, but I think it just ties in like what you're saying, Fisher, what you're saying, Ben, the overall extended family, the family of God, it's everybody. It's like, it's the aunts, the uncles, the cousins, and then it's all of us. And then it's also the adoptees or the foster kids and bringing them in. I can't help but go to just the level, just the potential for transformation that could happen if that happened. If the case was every Christian in America took a step and got one kid, solve the problem in an instant.
Is there a National Adoption Day?
Let's set it up.
There is a Stand Up for Kids Day that's coming up. I think actually it might have been last week. It's in these first 2 weeks of November. So check your calendars for that, and we'll be posting something about it for Watermark. So look for it. It's an exciting way, just to easy thing to repost and draw attention to. Foster the City is a nonprofit that we are partnering with, and they're just knocking it out.
Foster the City, man. They're awesome.
Yeah.
Well, I love that. So in light of today's society and the cultural norms, how would you say the family has come under attack? The family, how I originally described it, the family as God intended it. How would you say the family has come under attack?
Oh, every which way, right? I mean, what you're just saying, I think you made reference to this, George. It's like you look at any sort of children's show. I mean, I remember growing up, my little brother would turn on Wizards of Waverly Place or whatever the hell it was, And you pick your choice from Disney or Nickelodeon, and you have these examples of absent-minded fathers, these total goofballs who are incapable of any serious thought outside of, well, it's okay, sweetie, and then kind of the guffaw thing, right?
The Simpsons.
Simpsons, I was thinking.
Straight up.
I mean, this is explicitly just trying to undermine, I think, fathers in general, and give us weird depictions in popular society as to what a father should be, if at all, right? Otherwise, it's not much more than that, or much worse in some instances.
Which you could even, I would even go so far as say that's straight up indoctrination, like from the media.
Of course it is.
I don't know. In my mind, there's an agenda somewhere.
Right, and then you have schools, I think, generally trying to, obviously, the role of a school, the role of an education is to form the child, to help impart morals and these sorts of things. And there was a sense, perhaps before, in which schools were more communal insofar as, you watch something like, say, It's a Wonderful Life. And there's that one great scene where George calls up the one of the kids' teachers and chews her out. And then he goes down to the bar, and the husband of the teacher says, "Are you George?" And knocks him clear off his feet. I mean, this is again, it's weirdly related, but in a sense, it shows that this is a communal thing, right? This is a community that's accountable to one another, that they know each other and they know how the education is being taught. Now, I think it's much different, and this is even insofar, especially in our case here in California, you have things like the state, the school board of education. Of course, there was all the gender stuff, which that's a whole nother can of worms that we can get into if we want to. But just the way in which they're structuring the school boards, right? They're no longer accountable to the community. They've tried to create larger and larger organizations, partly because it's cost effective. And if you have, say, one supervisor, school supervisor for a county like Orange County, which has so many different cities and so many different schools within each city, it becomes easier. But it's also much easier to control because suddenly it's much more personal. You can give directives down from the state, and the supervisors say, well, hell, I've got 20 high schools to take care of. Great, here's the state board curriculum. Go for it. And then you give teachers free reign, and now teachers are being formed in different ways. I don't know that. Again, we're getting on controversial ground here, but there's a strange, wonderful, amusing, and completely awful and scary account, I think, on Twitter called Libs of TikTok. Okay. And they show all these young these young people who have their own varying ideas about norms, let's just say largely, whether about sex or gender or all these different things. Wow. And, we're fundamentally entrusting these people to shape and raise our children, to teach them that this is the right way forward and not whatever you're learning at home. And you get this, I mean, you've seen this with COVID, right? All the parents suddenly saying, now, wait, what are they saying when they're listening, in the other room on the kids on Zoom? And then all the teachers, I mean, there's countless cases that I saw on the news where teachers were saying, we don't want parents present when we're teaching your students. We don't want them to be able to listen in because what happens here is something that's cut off from them, right? Yeah. This is a way in which they're forming your children. Totally. Right? And
but
I'm going on and on here.
But that is the premise of what you're doing, right? When you said send a kid to any institution, is that that they're partners in their formation, whether you've abdicated that or like that. I think, and I just want to go to the heart of my point. There's this conversation. We do need to separate like what is a grand strategy of the attack on family versus what have we abdicated or drifted into? Yeah. Because a huge thing of what we're doing here in this organization in the show is like intentionality. Yeah. And so like when I'm hearing you, Fisher, accurately track the history of all of those, the institutions and schools and teachers and influences, whether it be social media or teachers, is like nothing wrong with putting them in front of them, but you just now have to work twice as hard to battle the worldview that they're offering them, or to correct, or to unlearn whatever it is. Because that's why I always wear my bias on my sleeve. Yeah, we're homeschoolers, but I'm not ever going to knock anyone who drops their kids off at school. Yeah. But it's so long as you understand that you may have to work twice as hard. Yeah. Because those institutions take their orders from above.
You do know that school 100%. Parents are domestic terrorists now, right?
School
parents who show up at the board meetings and speak on behalf of their children's welfare have now been coined as domestic terrorists.
Yeah.
According to whom?
The Attorney General. Yeah.
Seriously?
Yeah, I mean, this was the recent directive from the federal government was that they are essentially saying that these are people seeking to harm, communities. The concern mom going to the school board meeting, right, and decrying, woke,
this is
whatever,
real.
critical race theory.
This actually happened.
Yeah, no, wow. I mean,
hard to believe these days. Some of the things,
and this is perhaps the great takeaway from Virginia is like, no, these people actually have a voice, and if you're going to mess with them, they're going to mess back with you. Yeah. Right?
Wow.
And I look at how society's, deeming the father, toxic masculinity. Yet it's those same groups that are praising and idolizing these rappers who are degrading women, womanizing. They're idolizing money. They're looking down on others with haughtiness and elevating themselves. And they're even now being groomed towards becoming more feminine. I don't know if you've realized some of these rappers dressing very effeminate. And in fact, I believe that the agenda is, and this comes from some pretty high level intelligence, a friend that I know who's pretty tied into military government stuff, telling me that the agenda is to feminize basically fighting aged men because they're the greatest threat to tyranny.
So that ties in a little bit to my point, George. Well, on the one hand, like you decrying hip hop culture and music as negative influences as old as the culture wars, which is what it is. But with the exception of the feminizing, them, everything, the rest of the profile you described of rappers, you could also ascribe to Donald Trump. And so, see, then we get into a tension, right? Because the womanizing or money mongering or whatever else it is, like those influences. And simple point is not to pit them one against the other, just to say you need to be aware of them all. You need to be aware of them all. If they're whether the president's our role model or whether the pop music icon is our role model. But so here's like. This is not about you at all, but knowing you a little bit, I'd like to pick your bearing on this because you're back to your question, Ben. Your question was, and we got to wind this down in the next 5 minutes, was how was the family under attack, right? And the only thing, because I'm really behind on this more than you are, as you guys just evidenced a second ago, I didn't know that about local schools. But the only thing I read in the last 2 years about people who were like in an organized fashion trying to attack the nuclear family was BLM. Right. And I'm not going to make any other deductions or statements about BLM. I just, according to them, not according to anyone else, what someone else is saying about them, but according to them, if you went to their mission, vision, values page, it was very clear. We must,
I've read it.
Yeah. And you maybe even, remind us, but, they're very explicitly decrying a nuclear family model, that's wrong. This is how we got here. This is the problem. So that is an organized or strategic attack on kind of, at least in part, what we're talking about, probably.
Yeah.
So, but I think it may be a helpful conversation to separate those who are strategic versus this is just the world operating as the world is. You just expect the world to be that way. And it's on you, whatever family is listening right now, whether you're a party of one or you have a family, whether you're married or you have kids, it's up to you to be responsible for your own worldview wherever you go and whatever influences you have.
Which is back to intentionality, right? Because I mean, the way that I would separate that is like, there's the strategist, the agenda, but then like you're saying, there's the world, there's the business, there's marketing, there's advertising. Like people got to make money, people got to sell, people got to provide, and that's the way the world works. The world spins and goes around, and like you're saying, like you got to decide, you got to stop. Decide, be intentional.
And I'm not so sure you threw a question at me there, but I may provide an answer that, my encouragement was to people that you don't need to bow a knee to hateful ideology to love your neighbor. Yeah. And I received actually some extreme kind of hateful feedback from people who are like family to me and friends, of another race, as to like that I was kind of taking a stance against the race. And I was like, no, I'm taking a stance against the ideology. Like, you guys know me. I've loved you your entire lives. But because I stand against this ideology, it really has nothing to do with loving your neighbor. Right.
Yeah. Yeah, no, my question was, or my point / question is like, do you see, George, the difference between grand strategy, like people who, and I cited an example, so that would finish my question. Do you see a difference between those who are actually being strategic in their attack on the family, i.e., I cited one example, BLM. Another example I'd throw in there is the devil. Again, this is a Christian podcast, and I definitely believe he's the master strategist when it comes to attack on all things good. Absolutely. All things good. Absolutely. But then, like, I guess what I'm trying to say is, do you agree with me that, like, that list is, like, shorter than we think it is, of those who are actually in a strategic, explicit fashion coming against the family? All these other things may be destructive by default, but just who they are. Like you could just say social media is destructive to the family system, but that's not their mission statement, right? They may be by default, but they're not by grand design. And all I've seen, this is partly coming in from like the last 2 years, is I've seen people call every single thing a conspiracy theory. A conspiracy theory assumes a strategic web, a design, an intent, an intentional design. And I just don't think most of the things that got labeled that are that creative or that intelligent.
We could spend a lot more time on this, and Fisher probably has a lot better insight than I do, but I would say just the kind of the overall from the top down, and yes, it's just a few, but their agenda is to divide and conquer.
Yeah.
Well, let me just, I want to wrap this up here and finish with this last question. And the question is there a way, with today's shifting worldviews and the speed of things happening, is there a way to bring back old family traditions and values and really the God-centered, the Judeo-Christian values and worldviews back into the current, to society's maybe model of family? Is there a way to bring that back? But in light of what you said earlier, Ben, empathetically, in a way that is conducive to being constructive, like in a helpful way, right?
I'll go first here because I believe I really do have the answer.
Let's go.
Bring back Little House into the house.
Nice.
Bring back Little House into the house, and we will see a change in society.
Okay.
Bring back God into the mix, and we will see a change in society and in these statistics, right? And then I'm amazed that you brought up It's a Wonderful Life. God's ministered to me through that movie in so many ways. I was actually going to reference it here today. And, I just wanted to give kind of this vision of society where George was in trouble at the end there, right? They had lost the $8,000, all of the community's money, and that everybody in the community came to his rescue and all dumped all the money they had been saving onto the table, because that's how he had done it for them in the past, basically. And that's the design of community. Everybody putting each other's needs ahead of their own by choice.
Yeah.
So my response is just do it, right? But we at a certain point, and this is what I see a lot, say in like the sort of conservative commentator class, is all these people decry these things often, and for good reason, obviously, all the things that we're saying here today and many more reasons. But then they just say, these bachelors holed away in some little apartment in the middle of some big metropolitan city, not really living the life in which they're arguing for. And I think the best thing we can do is just to simply get out there and do it. Have a family. Yeah. Actually try and care for those around you. Actually try and have regular traditions and invite people over to your house regularly, once a week, whatever it might be, right? Yeah. But start creating these networks in these communities, these little platoons, as I was saying earlier. And really, as I said too before, there really is a sense of homelessness. I said this in the last episode when we were talking about home. There's a sense of homelessness among people. They recognize something's wrong. Any Gen Z, I feel like the sort of disposition is pessimism or irony. They kind of see through what they're being taught, but still go along with it. Yeah. And everyone can understand that something's off here. This picture that we've been given is not right. And so we, as people who adhere to these values and to adhere to this sort of more traditional conservative culture, and essentially what I'm trying to do in my work with the foundation is present an attractive image of what it means to be rooted, to know who you are, to love who you are and who we are, say as a community, as a state, as a nation, whatever it might be, and to offer that as an alternative, a real alternative that isn't just something that you laugh about or kind of write off as, well, that's the archaic old way of white men or whatever it might be, right? Or, oh, that's what old people talk about. But actually say, no, this is a thriving and real community, and it's open to you if you want it.
It's good. So here's my...
Just do it.
I'll give my final word, and this is from Cirque Institute Instagram account, and they're in the same vein of what Fisher's trying to do, is anchor to the past, traditions that are tried and true, by the way. Yeah. Like that's what I love about history or institutions or traditions, or the even word conservative values of going back, is if it's tried and true, then you should maintain it. Mm-hmm. And here's what they said about, and this is a classical education platform. That's what they do. They help kids read the ancients and the classics and the philosophy, even we read Little Home. That's part of our readings for our kids. Anyways, he's talking about courage. It says, courage is formed best through experience, a quick and harsh school. However, one can have a kind of secondhand encounter with courage in literature. And while not literally dangerous, these instances provide practice, quote, in the courageous arts. These paper encounters with virtue at its testing point can set resolve in the student's heart, for courage is, as J.R.R. Tolkien wrote in The Fellowship of the Ring, found in unlikely places. Wow. He goes on from C.S. Lewis. In reading great literature, I become 1,000 men and yet remain myself.
Wow.
So
I like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's so good. I mean, there's so many things we could keep going and going and going. But I think the fact of the matter is that family, the way that God intended it, is the way to bring about the positive, the healthy dynamics of society that we want to see. And I'm so thankful for Fisher and for all you guys and your contribution to the podcast of the show. I hope this episode was helpful and inspiring for whoever's listening to really go out there and do it and put it into action, man. Like, build upon this. This is important stuff, and it can't be missed. So thank you guys again so much just for listening in, and we hope you enjoyed it. And you know what? We will see you next time. Thank you so much for listening. We believe that family is the foundation of society, and if you can change your family, you can change the world. Become a legacy maker to tell a story worth being told.